The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Drivers, start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. Nascar, Indcar, Formula One, Formula E, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here is your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Well, indeed, the gang is all here. Kind of a snowy day. We might try and figure out a way, maybe, to let you guys see some of it. I've got a picture that producer John, I hope, is going to be able to put up on CRN Live on YouTube, and that will show, for example, that our home track where we do PA work is under snow. And all of this was yesterday, okay? Keep in mind, all of this was yesterday. So that means all of the roads have iced over, which means me trying to travel an hour or so to get to the radio station, not going to happen. Sorry to our radio partners. But we got plenty to get to, most notably a whole hassle of rule changes from NASCAR. Matt and I will get into it next. Producer John's there as well. Hope to be talking to you as well, right here on this YouTube-only edition.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Everybody from their homes this morning, which is kind of a weird thing. We've done it before, that's true, but still, it's unusual because we're so used to being in the radio studio environment. But that being said, good morning to you, Matt. How are you?
I'm a little cold, but I'm here.
I understand. I got home yesterday, and for those who don't know, my wife and I, we live really out in the middle of kind of nowhere, and we did that on purpose. We found a nice 5 acres of land, but there is a nice tall hill just literally midway through our road. Producer John knows about it because he stayed a few nights over here, and Matt, I think you've seen it too.
Mhm.
And yeah, I rolled down that hill yesterday very, very carefully, and I can tell you right now, I was the first and the only car to hit that hill. So I can pretty much guarantee you that whatever slush we had yesterday afternoon has turned to ice. So there was no way I was going to be getting out of here. So
Yep.
So just to be on the safe side, we decided to do YouTube only. We let our radio partners know that we weren't going to be able to make it. We apologize, but hey, we'll be back on that next week. Good Lord willing. Creeks don't rise and we don't get another snowfall. Last weekend, real quick, Tulsa shootout, precursor of the prestigious Chili Bowl Nationals, came down to a last lap battle between Cup Series regulars Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell. They had a restart on lap number 50. And remember, this is only a 55-lap race. Bell led at the time. A kid by the name of Emerson Axum sitting in second. Kyle Larson was third. Axum he couldn't stay with Bell and Larson. Larson was hot on the heels of Bell when the white flag flew. Larson was trying different lines. He actually tried Bell's line as they took the white flag and then took another line. For a moment, was actually able to pull even with Bell, but Bell was able to power off a turn 4, claim the win. Left Larson in second, Axum in third, Ricky Thornton Jr. in fourth, and KJ Snow filled out the top 5. Tulsa shootout attracted just shy of 1,800 confirmed entries. Some 762 drivers from 43 states, 5 countries accounted for as well. In all, 389 features were run, some 1,105 cars total running. That is an amazing turnout, but let's face it, this is the precursor to the Chili Bowl, so a lot of them just going to be sticking around, I would presume, right?
Yeah, there'll be quite a few stick.
Yeah, so Chili Bowl Nationals actually got rolling on Monday. They conclude tonight at the Tulsa Expo Raceway. If you're not in Oklahoma or not heading that way today, you can catch all the action on flowracing.com. Of course, had Ice Bowl, which had a record number last week. We talked a little bit about that during the Cross Flags podcast. They had a record number of cars show up out there as well. And you can follow that action on Flow Racing. And here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. That was your homework from last week. And that was the only homework you had, was to just watch a little bit of racing. And I even got a couple of people that responded and said, yep, finished my homework. So good on you. Good on you. This weekend, we've got, other than the Chili Bowl, which I just mentioned, Formula E's in competition. They're going to run the Mexico City E-Prix. This is on a shortened version of Formula One's track, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, downtown Mexico City. Live, the race will get rolling just after 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time here in the U.S. CBS has the rights. CBS will air it. Delayed. Tomorrow. They're going to delay this thing by a full day. They will start the coverage at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Central Time, or whenever their NFL playoff game ends.
That's about all you can say to that.
Yeah. And here's the thing that probably I could predict this right now. If, and I obviously have no idea whether or not it will, but let's presume for a moment that the NFL playoff game goes into overtime. CBS will cut the Formula E race. They won't air it.
Oh, no.
And that's just amazing to me. And if I were an executive with Formula E, just like if I was an executive with NASCAR, I'd be pretty ticked off at my network. But
That and then some.
I'm not the one in control of that. All right. So let's get into the news of the week here. Sorry, I just ate breakfast, so I'm going to have to grab something to drink here when we take our first break. But we're not going to deal with that here for just a couple of minutes. Latest in the lawsuit, let's go ahead and give you that. This week, NASCAR petitioned the court to dismiss the antitrust lawsuit against them brought by 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. We all know about that. The judge, Kenneth D. Bell, listened to both sides arguing on Wednesday. Friday, ruled against NASCAR's petition. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. Old judge, NASCAR won everything. New judge, Kenneth D. Bell, NASCAR's won nothing.
I think only NASCAR won one thing with the old judge. And this new one, they are over.
There you go. Bell wrote in his decision denying the thought of dismissing this, quote, "This is going to be a little bit, and there's a lot of lawyers speaking here, so pardon me when I go through this. The parties to this action cast their existential dispute, well, there's words, in a starkly different terms. According to the plaintiffs, NASCAR, led by the dynastic France family, is the iron-fisted monopolistic ruler of premier stock car racing that has imposed anti-competitive take-it-or-leave-it terms on the plaintiffs and other top-tier racing teams. Wow. In the defendant's telling, NASCAR and the France family are the founders and the guiding light of a beloved and valuable racing series who have fairly negotiated mutually beneficial charter agreements that reflect reasonable commercial terms between NASCAR and the race teams. Kenneth Bell, I don't know what they said in court. I don't have, the printout from the stenographer, but the way that Kenneth D. Bell is taking this and putting this stuff in here is just absolutely amazing here in what it is that he's apparently hearing. He continues on to say, what is the actual evidence and how does it inform a correct legal conclusion? These questions cannot be determined on motions to dismiss in this action where the plaintiffs have sufficiently alleged one or more plausible antitrust claims against the defendants within the applicable period of limitations. Instead, the answers must be found when the parties have a full opportunity to pursue discovery on the relevant facts, and then at trial where the jury will be able to weigh the evidence and assess the credibility of the witnesses unless the case is resolved sooner by the parties or by the court. Therefore, the court will deny the defendant's motion to dismiss. And on top of that, the court also denied NASCAR's request to have each team, 2311 and Front Row, post a bond, a minimum, according to NASCAR's request, of at least $10 million for each car that the team would race in 2025. NASCAR based that upon the alleged harm that NASCAR, would suffer for being forced to allow them to compete under the charter agreement. Bell wrote about his denial of this request, quote, the alleged harm to NASCAR of allowing the plaintiffs to race chartered cars on the same terms as the other 30 chartered teams, is presently both uncertain and unquantified. Therefore, the court in its discretion will waive the security requirement of Rule 65C and not require the plaintiffs to post a bond for the issuance of the preliminary injunctions. However, by this ruling, the court does not foreclose NASCAR's ability to later pursue reimbursement for harm that it contends it has suffered as a result of being wrongfully entered injunction. Bell wrapped up his decisions by setting the date for the trial, which we're going to have to go through the entire 2025 season for this. The date for the trial, December 1st.
At the rate he's going, it's probably going to be done quicker than that.
At this point in time, NASCAR seems to be blocked on just about every single opportunity that they're having. Everything's been denied. The court has gone in favor of 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. Now, could that change? Sure. But at this point in time, like you said, in going through what you've seen, it was pretty much all NASCAR with the first judge. Then they replaced the judge with this current one, and everything's going in favor of the teams.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
Wow. So the drama continues. We'll see how much longer the drama goes. I'll be real honest with you when I say this. I don't think it should go on much longer because does it really do NASCAR any good to not have 2311 and or Front Row Motorsports in NASCAR? It doesn't, not in my mind.
No, it doesn't. No.
So I don't know what it is that they're trying to do. It seems like there should be some common ground somewhere here, and I don't understand this whole thing.
And I think what's going to happen, Jeffrey Kessler's going to push them to get that common ground because he's calling their bluff on every single thing that he's got, and the judge is seeing what he's calling them on. So I think they're going to have to concede. Let's call it that.
That's a good way to put it, and they should. We'll see how much longer they continue to kind of. What's the best way to put it? Go through the motions, because that's really about the best way to put it. I can't think of another way to put that. It's really them going through the motions right now of trying to put up some sort of a token argument, but none of them seem to be floating. So that's on them. Let's get down to the other business here. Of course, we know, and we talked even about it last week, because not just one, but two of Chase Elliott's Hooter paint schemes were in the top 10 of diecast sales from 2024. And probably because of the fact that, number one, it was a pretty good looking car. And number two, all of the problems that happened during it, the people might think that there may be some worth to those later on. I'm not going to guarantee it. But at the same time, with Hendrick having to cut those ties with the Hooters due to the restaurant chain's financial troubles, non-payment of sponsorship obligations, and so on, it does seem that the company, and no, I'm not talking about Hooters, I'm talking about Hendrick Motorsports, seems to have landed on its feet because they now have a replacement sponsor for Chase Elliott's Cup Series ride. And if these guys can't pay their bill, well, don't come crying to me because I'm a subscriber. It's Amazon Prime Video. Not a bad sponsor.
That's a good one.
Not a bad one. I mean, I get it on my TV. I say that I'm a subscriber. We'll just say that that's a polite way to put it.
Yeah.
The legal way to put it. I'll put it that way. Most people know where I'm going with that. Hooters was set to be primary for 3 races. Amazon now takes over for those 3, announced as Spring Talladega, Kansas, and the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. So basically, they're doing this all in the front half of the year. In other words, where Fox has the control. And there's a reason why, because they place this timing specifically because the race at North Wilkesboro is, of course, the All-Star race. And what's the next weekend? Memorial Day weekend. The 5-race slate of races that Amazon Prime gets when it comes to the Cup Series. So their 3 races are basically to advertise their upcoming slate of Cup Series races on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It's a pretty good looking car too. John, were you able to get those pictures or not?
There
you go. Okay, yeah. I just was able to go over there and look. Pretty good looking car, kind of plain, but not bad at all. All right, let's see here. We'll tell you what, John, we're going to go ahead and take this break right here. This will allow me to go get something to drink and get all that stuff settled down. But when we come back, we've talked about the double. Obviously, we talked about
4 tires
and
and 2 cans.
Running the Indy 500, the Coca-Cola 600. And we've been wondering where the IndyCar guys are when it comes to trying to run a little bit more NASCAR than just drivers who are looking for rides. Could we have crossover or some really, really good IndyCar drivers, basically, is what we were wondering. So when we come back, we're going to talk about one of those drivers that is looking to have not only had major success in IndyCar, but try to do it in NASCAR as well. That'll happen right after this on CRN.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. 4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show. Steve West, Matt Nicholson. Producer John is doing the best that he can from not having the access to our main computer, and I think he's doing actually a quite nice job. Thank you very much, Producer John. All right, so on this icy day where we're doing YouTube only, John, somewhere down the line you got a picture of Talladega Superspeedway. Let's go ahead and jump ahead to that real quick, and let's let people see what Talladega looked like yesterday as the sun dawned, and we got a good idea of exactly what everything looked like. And this is just Talladega. There are other tracks, obviously, that got quite a bit of snow. Atlanta did, North Wilkesboro and Charlotte and all that. But, when it comes down to it, we think about our home track at Talladega, and we don't really think about snow here in and around central Alabama. And there you go. That's Talladega about 24 hours ago. And I'm a little behind, don't get me wrong. So as I say that, but yeah, that's welcome to the world of what we are dealing with. And all of that turned to slush in the afternoon and then iced back up overnight. So that's why we're doing this from our homes. So John, whenever you get the opportunity, just kind of throw that back up and it'll kind of remind people, of exactly why we're doing this via YouTube only. Sorry to our radio partners and our regular listeners on our radio affiliate. All right. The double is something that we've talked about many, many times. A whole lot of drivers have attempted the double, most notably Kyle Larson last year. Little less common to see a regular IndyCar driver come over and attempt NASCAR. Not as common amongst those who at least have had a lot of success in IndyCar, but one of those guys is going to try and buck that trend, and that's Helio Castroneves. Helio Castroneves is actually going to attempt to do something that really only Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt have done in the past, which is be an IndyCar regular, win the Indy 500, and add a Daytona 500 win. And that's not an easy feat. It seems that Castroneves has been trying to get a ride in the Daytona 500 for a couple of years now, but this year is it, and you can thank Trackhouse Racing and their Project 91 ride. Darian Grubb, who knows how to win races. Let's face it, he won 5 out of 10 with Tony Stewart to claim the 2011 Cup Series title. He'll be the crew chief of the number 91 Chevy Camaro, and I'm still going to call it a Camaro, even though I don't think it's going to have the Camaro name on it anymore. This seemed important when the news initially broke. This car doesn't have a charter.
Right.
So at the time that this came out, and I'm going to make that point very, very clear, at the time that this news came out, chronologically, he was going to have to make the race on speed. We'll get back to that. Wendy's going to be the primary sponsor of the effort, so should show up pretty good. The Wendy's look is a pretty distinctive look. Castroneves is now the third driver outside of the regular NASCAR world to get behind the wheel of this Project 91 entry. First, it featured ex-F1 driver Kimi Räikkönen. Then they went with the Australian Shane Van Gisbergen, who was able to parlay that into what this coming season will be a full-time Cup Series ride. As for Castroneves, at the end of the 2024 season, he was still considered an active driver. He raced for Meyer Shank Racing in the IndyCar Series last year, got into 3 races. But at this time, he's actually not slated for any 2025 races in the IndyCar season. I expect he'll probably get another shot at the Indy 500, which if he won would make it a record-breaking 5th win. Castroneves claimed his 4th Indy 500 win in 2021. That ties him with a very select crowd. Only 4 drivers who have that many wins in the history of that famed race. And since then, he's kind of moved into becoming a part owner of the aforementioned Meyer Shank Racing. He doesn't have any NASCAR starts specifically. So what he's going to have to do, and this got confirmed shortly after, he's going to have to run the ARCA Menard Series season opener at Daytona. And the thing about it is we found out a little bit about that car, and I'm going to let you, Matt, go ahead and take it over, because it's not one of the powerhouse teams that we generally think of when it comes to the ARCA Menard Series. You think of like a Venturini Motorsports, but this car is no slouch.
Oh no, the car's not a slouch at all. He's driving a second car for the Pinnacle Racing Group, which is a team that Shane Huffman is a general manager and the crew chief of the main 28 car.
Not a bad
He,
deal to have if you can get it.
yeah, he's going to be a teammate in Daytona to Brendan Queen, that is running the full Arkham Menard Series schedule this year, the national tour. He did actually get into the car this the past couple days at the ARCA pre-race preseason test that they had at Daytona, and looking at the time chart, it doesn't look like that he did a lot of drafting practice. He was 27th on the speed chart.
Okay.
And Brendan Queen was 26th, and they were only separated by 5 thousandths of a second.
So
So
it
they're
seems
in
like
pretty
they might
close
have
agreement.
worked together.
Yeah, they were working together
Yeah,
because
but stayed away from everybody else for the most part.
yeah, but one thing I definitely did not have on my bingo card for Daytona test and ARCA car is out of the, let's word them, the larger names like Castroneves that was testing in there, Corey Day, people like that, Moffat were testing in Daytona.
Yeah.
I
We'll
did
get back
not
to Corey
have
Day, too.
I did not have Catherine Legg as the fastest out of that bunch.
The fastest? No, I would not have had her either.
She was out of the list. She was 13th quickest out of all of those.
Wow. All right.
Yep.
Good on her. Who's she driving for?
The new SPS team.
Wow. Nice debut. Okay.
Mhm.
We'll see how this translates once we get into racing. So he'll run the Arkham Menard Series opener just to double check and allow NASCAR to make sure that they know or feel comfortable enough letting him get onto the super speedway, which I didn't think that was going to be much of a problem either.
I'm pretty sure they already cleared him in this test over the
Yeah,
last few days.
exactly. Castroneves said of this opportunity, quote, "I know how much of a challenge this is going to be, but I also know the type of people and the team that Trackhouse Racing is going to bring to this effort. I can't wait to get to the Trackhouse Race Shop in North Carolina, meet with everyone, prepare for Daytona. This so much that I must learn, and I am ready to get started." So he's got the right mentality for it.
He must learn for sure.
Yeah, we've talked about this crossover situation. It does seem, at least so far, to be easier for drivers to acclimate going from stock cars to open wheel than going, say, from Indcar, we'll just go ahead and put it that way, into NASCAR. Or am I wrong? I mean, again, we've got exceptions to the rule, Tony Stewart being probably the most obvious one, and I get it. I'm sitting in front of a whole display where half of it, if not 2/3 of it, is filled with Tony Stewart stuff. I've made no doubt about the fact that I am a Tony Stewart fan, but because of that, I can feel comfortable saying that Tony Stewart's one of those people that seems to be more exception to the rule of having success in IndyCar and then being able to translate it over to NASCAR.
Sure.
As opposed to most of the drivers. Think Danica Patrick, think Sam Hornish Jr., think, any number of them that tried to make the transition and couldn't really seem to make it stick.
Danica Patrick, Hornish, Montoya.
Yeah, that's true. Pablo Montoya.
Dario Franchitti tried it.
Yeah, didn't go well.
Another one. I know there's another one somewhere.
I mean, at times we've heard of Connor Daly getting a few NASCAR starts here and there, but nothing really big.
Connor Daly.
Marco
Andretti.
Yeah, that's true. Marco's tried it a couple of times. And, we can either blame or we can credit. Depends on how you want to look at it. The SRX series to a certain extent, because it allowed some of those drivers to be able to get a taste of some stock car racing, which maybe they didn't have in the past. It certainly seems to have worked for Elio Castroneves, and we talked about that during the Cross Flags podcast, where CEO Don Hawk had promised him a stock car start. It just took a little while to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem to have whetted the appetite of a couple of those drivers who were able to come in and do that. But again, the success rate is a little bit different. But when you look at what Elio's driving in the Arkham Menard series, you look at the fact that this is the Project 91 entry, which means it's going to be a good car, and we know it's going to be a good car. You actually made a pretty bold prediction on Wednesday during Cross Flags. What was that prediction for those who haven't seen it yet?
Well, this is before all of said rule changes came yesterday.
No, that's true.
But I'm not going to be totally shocked to see an all international front row for the 500. Because
and
we
an
all
all
know
Trackhouse front row.
Yeah, we all know how these storylines of people that coming into the 500 of how they will magically show up within the, let's just say, the top 5 of qualifying. Case in
Sure.
point, when the 3 car come back in 2014, what did the
Yeah.
3
Who's
car
sitting
do?
on
3
pole?
cars on the pole.
Danica
What?
Patrick's debut. She
Danica
was on
Patrick.
pole.
Jeff Gordon's final 500, he was on the pole.
That's true too. It does seem to work out that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you can put your car in the front, congratulations. Can you keep it there? That's another story entirely.
For sure.
All right. So with all of that set aside, we know that Elio Castroneves, Trackhouse Racing, the Project 91 entry with Wendy's on the hood, going to be trying to get in. And that's when NASCAR started to announce big rule changes for 2025. And the first one directly affects Elio Castroneves. And let's face it, it all but guarantees him a starting spot in the Daytona 500. NASCAR has instituted what they're calling the Open Exemption Provisional. And this is what they term this. This is their words, not mine. They call this being similar to a, quote, promoter's provisional that is used in short track and dirt racing. In this case, it will guarantee a starting position for, in their words, a world-class driver to enter a Cup Series race, not necessarily one in specificity. There's a word for you. Wow, it's really early in the morning to throw that out. In this case, let's face it, they are squarely looking at the Elio Castroneves Trackhouse Project 91 entry when they're talking about this, because we haven't heard of any other driver thinking about doing some one-off Cup Series race later on in the year yet.
Keyword yet.
Right. Now the door seems to be wide open for this. So you have this. Now there are provisions to this, if you will. If the open exemption provisional is used, neither the driver nor the car owner are eligible for race points, playoff points, prize money, or any tiebreaker benefit of the finishing position. A race team must request the provisional at least 90 days prior to the event, noting that full-time NASCAR drivers not eligible for this provisional, so it's not like the old past champions provisional. The criteria for the approval of the OEP comes on a case-by-case basis, NASCAR rules now state. Should the car win a stage and or a race that will count towards eligibility for the All-Star race, they, of course, can claim the trophy if they get the win, but it does not count to the playoffs. The second place car would inherit the first place points, not gaining playoff eligibility or playoff points, though. In addition, this also means that a 40-car starting field could now become 41 cars.
So at 25 minutes till the top of the hour.
Yes.
Is it too early to go ahead and take an entire bottle of Aleve?
No, by all means, go ahead. Take a moment and do that, because now we've got the question of, wait a minute, we just found out Elio Castroneves was getting in. How does he get in under the OEP, right? It wasn't requested at least 90 days out, right? Well, not according to NASCAR. NASCAR reports via NASCAR.com, their own website, that Trackhouse knew of the provision, knew of the attempt to get the Project 91 car into this Daytona 500, and said that they made the request in time to cover the NASCAR mandate. 90 days out.
So that's last October.
Of the race, right?
Of the race.
So you're telling me that Trackhouse Racing knew back in October, again, before the 2024 season came to an end, that they were definitely putting the Project 91 car into the Daytona 500?
I have never in my life. That's at least November that they knew.
Yeah, I mean, if you go 90 days before race date, so we're going mid-February. That's mid-November.
That's mid-November.
You're still talking right about the same time we were getting ready to run a championship race. One would have thought that they would have still had Phoenix on their mind, even if they're not necessarily competing for a title.
Yeah. This is the question that I would pose to the class here for a I don't know, you want to call it a mid-session exam here. If I'm Justin Marks,
okay,
if I'm running under the OEP provisional and the guidelines for it,
Sure.
If I'm putting somebody like Elio Castroneves in my car to run the biggest race of the year, I'm guaranteed a starting spot, but per the statutes, let's word it that way, neither the driver nor the car owner, I can get the race points and the playoff points. But why would I put that car in the race if I am not going to get any prize money? Why would I?
Interesting point.
Why would I put that in there? So now, all right, let's now what NASCAR has done, because we know what when they cut these field sizes down, we all know what the respective tracks did. They restructured and reset their pit road to guess
Yes.
what? We only have 40 pit stalls. So now, because nobody knows when this 41st car may show up, and said 41st car has got this OEP provisional in its pocket. I'm driving the hauler through the gate to parking station. Hey, we're set. We ain't got to worry about loading up and going home in 6 hours from now when we qualify.
Right.
Okay, we're set. We're good. We're ready to go. Where are we going to pit the car? So now all these racetracks have to
Scramble.
have to put back in a 41st pit stall just in case.
Yeah. What this does is this gives them the 90 days to be able to do it.
So
that's really all that
days
that's accomplished.
So let's see here. It's January. So if Justin Marks decides to want to put Elio at Talladega, so his OAP provisional request is already in for Talladega. I mean, because we're in that time frame.
Yeah, we would need to be. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Why are we trying to take it and do it just like, oh, we're going to be like short track. So if we got a 41st car and we catch wind of Justin Marks is going to put, I don't know, Sergio Perez in the race, at which I may be speaking this into existence. I don't know. He's putting Sergio Perez in the race at Mexico City. Hey, we're going to put him.
That would be popular.
I'm sure it would be popular. It'd be huge.
Yeah, it would be.
Or just somebody else go, we're going to field a car. We're going to put Pato O'Ward in the car in Mexico City, which we know Zach Brown's already said if he can get a ride from Mexico City, he would be exempt from the Indcar events.
Sure. Yeah, and I understand that.
I mean, if I'm, let's say here, you got the Project 91 car. Who's another car that can do this? Let's just say another Chevrolet team.
RCR's got the 33.
RCR's got the 33.
Yeah.
Kaulig could pull a car out and partner it with McLaren because they got that Chevrolet tie.
That's true.
Okay. Are they going to allow 2 OEP? They open a can of worms up here. Do you want to allow 2 OEPs or is it just 1 OEP per race?
Oh, please, somebody test this.
And I got a feeling somebody like Zach Brown will test it.
And they should. Why not?
Mexico City, it'll be tested.
Yeah, why not? Because, I mean, you got Daniel Suarez in there already. You mentioned it, Sergio Perez, who doesn't have a Formula One ride this year. He's sitting out there waiting. Would he be interested in doing a full-time Cup Series thing? He's already said no, because he's one of those F1 guys who seems to be afraid of racing at a roval, but we're going to Mexico City. You're going to run on a road course anyway. What do you care? So he'd get to do it along with Daniel Suarez. And then, like you said, there's Pato O'Ward, who's also a Mexico native. You now putting 3 drivers who are all Mexico natives into a race in Mexico City. This would be a dream for NASCAR. But at the same time, if they're not in a chartered car, to your point, only one can get an OEP.
Yeah, that's This is what I don't understand because it is so confusing. Or here's another scenario. Who did we see get back in a cup car at Watkins Glen last year in a 2311 car?
Mm,
On Montoya.
yeah.
Bring Juan Montoya back. He's in a car from Mexico City.
Wouldn't be an unwelcome addition, even though he's not a native of Mexico.
Right. So this is what this OEP garbage does for Daytona. All right. Let's just, what I'm calling it is garbage. We got Jimmy Johnson. We got Elio Castroneves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got the cameras locked in on them. They're racing for the final transfer spot, even though we know Castroneves is locked in the race.
Sure.
All right. You got the scenario Johnson soundly races his way in. Castroneves is out. Oh, but Castroneves is in, which therefore Daytona 500 now is going to be 41 cars.
Right.
Let's flip it. Castroneves races his way in. Guess who's knocked out? Jimmy Johnson is out of the 500. So we're going to give Castroneves, somebody that's never set foot in a stock car of this nature, a guaranteed spot. But we're going to let the 7-time champion that has more than earned his fair share of races and earned his way to be able to do what he needs to do be knocked out because of a guaranteed exemption provisional.
There's a certain part of that, though, that I really kind of don't have a problem with, because to me, this is a lot like bump day for the Indy 500.
Which is
literally anybody could find themselves out of the Indy 500 just because you might have just happened to have had a bad day.
Exactly. This is where the Daytona 500 needs to pivot, just like Indianapolis. Nobody's safe. Period.
Even the charter cars?
Safe. Even the charter cars.
Okay, so you'd like to see NASCAR do exactly what IndyCar did when it came to the charters. Charters are good for 16 out of the 17 races during this upcoming IndyCar season, but charters don't matter worth a flip when it comes to the Indy 500.
Thank you.
You'd like to see NASCAR do the same thing and say charters don't matter worth a darn. You have to get in on merit either through qualifying, which guarantees you a spot on the front row, or you have to race your way in on the duels on Thursday night.
Thank you.
And if you just happen to miss out, tough.
And I'll use the military terms here, Sierra Oscar Lima.
There you go. I like it. Okay. That actually is a rule change I would get 100% fully behind. I think it would be a really, really cool thing, because we talk about what I was worried about is that we seem to be going down kind of the hypocrite mode, because we love bump day at Indy 500, but you can't do that at the Daytona 500 except if you are a non-chartered car. I think every single car, like to your point, I think every single car should be on that hot seat. And who knows how many people it might actually attract at that point in time. Because if there are only 4 open slots, it does kind of limit. Everybody wants to get into the Daytona 500, but there are only 4 open slots.
Sure.
So how much of a chance am I willing to put into it? But under your plan, you and I could enter it, and you and I could get into the race, whereas a 7-time champion, Jimmy Johnson, to your point, is sitting out.
Yeah, which is where, like in turn, which I said, this OEP provisional is trash. It's trash, and that's not a knock. Good grief, I can't talk today. That's not a knock at Justin Marks or Elio Castroneves. I'm a huge fan of Justin Marks.
Yeah,
I've always liked Castroneves, but just because he's making his inaugural start or making his inaugural attempt at the 500, he shouldn't get grandfathered in by some trash rule.
I can kind of agree with that. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
Just because if I'm let's just say I'm in the shoes of Jimmy Johnson driving for Chip Ganassi in IndyCar like he did, I shouldn't get an automatic provisional to get in the Indy 500 just because I've won 7 cup titles. No.
Sure.
I should have to race qualify my way in on raw speed the same way that Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Joseph Newgarden, Will Power, and all the other ones have to do the same thing. If they got to do it, I got to do it too.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. Yeah, I actually like that idea. What this does do, though, is this now allows, in this case, the Fox network, which has the rights to the Daytona 500 televising it, they can now include Elio Castroneves in all their promos.
Oh, yeah.
That's what mainly that's what that does at this point in time.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to take a break here, Producer John, and while he's setting that up and getting ready to go, we're going to give you some other news that happened over the course of this week. Beard Motorsports announced their driver. Front Row Motorsports has shown us a couple of sponsors, and then we'll get back into more of these rules changes. And because we're a YouTube-only show this morning, we can go however long we want. We're not constrained by time. Ain't that cool? So, yeah, we'll get to it all this morning here. We're just underway. Strangely enough, we're almost an hour in, too. We'll talk the other rules changes and other things going on in the Cup Series coming up here in a moment on CRN. All right, let's get back into things here. Thank you to Producer John for giving us a chance to kind of catch our breath, get a swig, something to drink and such, and get back into things here on this snowy day here in the southern part of the country. Very slushy and icy, too. If you are planning on going out and about, be careful, won't you, please? Before we talk the other rules changes, like I said before the break here, Beard Motorsports announced who was going to be driving the number 62 Chevrolet in the Daytona 500. Matt, you called it last week. Fast Pasta, Anthony Alfredo, got sponsorship from Fortify Building Solutions for this particular event. And this, let's face it, he's no stranger to doing this. He raced 3 times for Beard Motorsports in 2024, including his best finish, which came at Talladega last spring, where he claimed 6th. So really not a big surprise there We knew that Beard Motorsports likes Anthony Alfredo. So when you said that this was the likely pairing, I wasn't surprised. It seemed more a matter of when, not if, they would announce it.
Yep, exactly.
So good to go for him. Then there's Front Row Motorsports. They announced not just one, but two. And I saw this early this week. One of the groups on social media that I am a member of specifically was wondering when they were going to announce any of Noah Gragson's sponsors and who might some of them be. And you and I kind of went over this probably about this time last year when Noah Gragson got announced to go into the 10 car, in that there are a certain number of sponsors that stick with Noah Gragson as opposed to being signed to a specific team. And we talked about this a little bit as well last week. So it seems to be just a matter of time before the likes of the Bass Pro Shops, the likes of Tracker Boats, the like of Winchester Rifles, the likes of Black Rifle Coffee Company get announced as all being part of the roster lineup for Noah Gragson on what will be the 4 car for Front Row Motorsports. And that's a weird thing to say for me. But a couple of other ones before even that. Zepp, the cleaning supply company, they're going to be a primary sponsor for 2 races this coming year on the 4 car. They're going to be on the car in Atlanta in June, and for the regular season finale, Daytona in August. And maybe even more importantly, yes, they're going to get hood time on the 4 car for 2 races, but they're going to be an associate sponsor for Front Row Motorsports for the remainder of the year. Not really a big surprise. The surprise part of it is the fact that not just on the 4 car, for literally every single car Front Row Motorsports has in the Cup Series and in the Craftsman Truck Series.
Yeah, that's good for them for sure.
Yeah, so they're putting a pretty good investment into that. Mm-hmm. And then they also announced that another sponsor for the 4 car is going to be a company called MillerTech. MillerTech, not Miller Brewing Company. MillerTech will cover 3 races. They're a producer of high-end lithium batteries for use in tools and other equipment. They're going to be in a trio of races, Pocono, Michigan, and Dover. And this does, in effect, reunite MillerTech with Gragson. They had a 1-race deal where MillerTech was on the hood of the 10 car for Stuart Haas Racing. And this just shows that they liked what they had and experienced with Noah Gragson, and they're willing to expand it at least by a couple of races. So good on them.
Yeah, I see a trend developing here of sponsors that he had at SHR outside of those main ones. They're following him to Front Row.
Not a bad deal at all.
So, and after seeing on his social media, some of his social media channels over the past week, where he was enjoying the outdoors with Tony Stewart and another very, very large name sponsor, Rusty Rush of Rush Truck Centers. I'm pretty sure, and I feel confident in saying the next one you'll see is Rush Truck Centers.
Probably so. All right, so let's get back to this myriad of rules changes that NASCAR decided to throw out. One of the more innocuous ones here I found kind of interesting. The over-the-wall crew has seen an adjustment in the rules. This specifically deals with the Jackman. The series director, if they declare wet weather conditions, okay, there's your proviso in there. But if wet weather conditions are declared by the series director of trucks, Xfinity, Cup, one would presume ARCA as well, they will allow the Jackman to go over the wall as the racer is approaching the pit stall. In other words, they don't have to remain on the pit wall. They just have to remain close to said pit wall, at least until the car is only 1 pit stall away. This is going to be a timing situation, because if you're dealing with wet weather conditions and the Jackman realizes, okay, my driver is 1 pit stall away and tries to run across there, you see my problem with this?
Yet again, this. Why would we be doing a live pit stop? Live, considering that what I consider live is full speed.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be doing a full speed pit stop in wet weather.
No.
They only can pit the cars until when the car comes to a complete stop. So why are we changing this part of it?
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
I agree. Let's see. In addition, said Jackman must first perform his Jackman duties before he would do anything else, presuming that he would. Otherwise, he would be deemed over the wall too early. Okay, whatever. Somebody's going to test this, and we're going to have a whole bunch of people trying to figure out what the whole parameters are. I can see it.
Yeah, it's coming.
Let's see. One of the other ones, big change to the playoff waiver policy in the wake of the waiver that was granted to Kyle Larson in 2024 because he missed the Coca-Cola 600 start. NASCAR has said that in the case of the approval of a non-medical waiver, that driver would then forfeit all playoff points accrued up to that point in the season. This rule applies to all non-medical waivers, and they stated this specifically, including suspensions for any reason. So let's say, for example, that what happened last year at the Indy 500 happens again. So should things turn south with the weather again in 2025 as they did in 2024, even before NASCAR made this change, it should be noted Rick Hendricks said that Larson was going to leave the Indy 500 in order to make sure he hit the scheduled start of the Coca-Cola 600. They're going to have Tony Kanaan on standby to take over if needed. But if this rule had been in place for 2024, effectively that would have meant, because of the amount of complaining, I can't think of another way to put it, that everyone kind of did and before NASCAR figured it out, Kyle Larson's playoff bonus points were all but null if this rule were in effect in 2024.
Yeah, they would have been. It would have.
It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I don't know the ramifications yet because we're not in a position where anybody's doing this. Again, this specific, I'm going to call it the Kyle Larson rule because we hadn't heard anything about this beforehand. I mean, all of the waivers that we heard beforehand were medical. But for example, Tony Stewart got injured when he was doing sand rail and had to sit out a race or two.
Here's how we eliminate this problem.
Would that be considered medical or non-medical? I mean, yes, he got injured and had to miss NASCAR races because of it, but it was because he did other stuff.
Right. Here's how you eliminate the problem altogether. And, they can go ahead and put me on payroll for all I care. Here's how you eliminate it. The only time that a waiver is implied, let's use it in those terms.
Okay.
Not is implied, should be implied, is for medical reasons that are non-extracurricular related.
With one exception. And I'll note this one right now real quick, and we'll get back into the conversation. Fox Sports NASCAR reporter Bob Pogras added to the waiver rule that this medical exemption will apply, allowing for playoff points accrued up to that point to remain in place. When he was asked about what if the medical emergency is one of the driver's family members, Pogras said that NASCAR would treat that as a medical situation for the driver and the full waiver would still be in place and your playoff points would remain. So in other words, wife, son, daughter, whatever, that exception I get.
That is, and it's not worded to be, let me word this cautiously here. It's not worded to be knocking at someone or degrading a situation. That is what I would call the Ty Gibbs rule. Case in point of what happened to his dad a few years ago. He unexpectedly lost his dad overnight.
Right.
All right. That's what you would call a Ty Gibbs rule.
Yeah.
Which is more than fine. That is beyond acceptable.
Yeah. Agreed.
Medical emergencies that are non-extracurricular related, that would apply to yourself or family that you need to be with.
Yeah.
That is more than fine.
Yeah.
Or if your respective spouse is expecting a child and you need to leave the track before said race starts.
Yep.
And you have a fill-in driver.
I have no problem.
Those are beyond fine.
Yeah. I have no problem with that at all.
But if you get suspended due to stupidity on a racetrack, let's call it for what it's worth.
Sure.
Why should you be granted a playoff waiver because you've done something stupid on the track?
You shouldn't.
Period. You shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's go to this. And I got to admit, on the surface at least, and you may dig into this a little bit further and cause me to change my mind, but right now I have no problem with this change. NASCAR changed the relationship on the damaged vehicle policy, the DVP. All of this caused a stir late in 2024 as well, because really of the inconsistent way that it was implemented. In effect, it was all but done away with, in fact. One thing does remain, and I'm not 100% certain of this, but I kind of understand why you don't want them just sitting on pit road interminably trying to make repairs. So the 7-minute clock will remain. In other words, teams will have 7 minutes to effect repairs on pit road. Now, before, once that clock ran out, once that happened, the team was done. The team had to push the car behind the wall. They were out of the race. Now, beginning with, one would presume, the clash at Bowman Gray, once that clock runs out, and I use that loosely because there's not really a pit stall that you can use at Bowman Gray. So let's just call it the beginning of the season, the Daytona 500. You can do repairs up to 7 minutes long on pit road for the Daytona 500. Once that clock runs out, NASCAR will now allow the teams to push the car behind pit wall and continue to make repairs and then get back into the race. Under the flat tire rule, if the car has 4 flat tires and needs to be towed, that car will be taken directly to the garage, but again, it will not be ruled out of the race. They will be allowed at that point in time to change the tires and continue. I have a small problem with that. Why not, we've said this before, we said this last year. Why, if it appears to be no problem other than just the 4 tires went flat because they went into a spin along the backstretch, say at Daytona, where there is a myriad amount of asphalt, and you just end up doing this flat spin, but you don't hit a wall, you don't hit another car, you just end up spinning and you flatten all 4 tires. Why can't we do that tire change on pit road? Why do we have to go behind the wall?
Yet again, something that makes no sense. If it's only the flat tires, like you said, change the 4 flat tires on pit road, put them back on the track, be done with it.
Exactly.
But if you got damage that takes longer than 7 minutes to repair and you can't repair it fully on pit road, 9 times out of 10, your car is done already.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what repairs they're thinking of. I mean, I guess you could replace spindles and stuff like that, or tie.
They don't have the spindles anymore. They have those toe links.
Well, okay. So could you replace the toe link?
Those toe links are already. Those toe links are already preset with links, the length that they have within the setup for each respective track that they're on to adjust camber and caster. Yeah. So if you got one that breaks, and I'm calling you on the radio, hey, toe links broke.
Okay.
And I can drive that car back to the pit stall. You take that tire off. The toe link is only held by 2 bolts.
Right.
Zip, zip. Tire link back up, tire on. I'm on the track.
Shouldn't take.
It's an easy fix because those toe links. A lot of people may not have seen them, but I've been up close and seen a toe link. They're not but about that long. They're short.
Okay, so that's
zip, boom, boom. There you go.
That shouldn't take 7 minutes.
That should take 2.
Okay. So I'm not really sure where they're going with this. Again, on the surface, I don't really have a problem with it because beforehand, when you went behind the wall, you were out of the race automatically. At least this way you can bring the car back out. It'll be interesting to see what kind of repairs we're talking about that would cause a car to have to go behind the wall and get repairs done and have to come back out.
And see, there was a way you could manipulate that because you get the damages fixed and I'm taking the car back on the track at the 6 minute 30-second mark.
Okay.
Let's just say that. All right. When I hit the racing surface, I'm still technically on the DVP clock. I've got to complete 1 full lap at speed, minimum speed, to be off the clock.
Even under caution.
It's under green.
Thank you. Okay. Wanted to clarify.
Under green, not under caution, because you can't complete minimum speed under caution. All right.
There you go.
But if I'm going, hey, something ain't right, something ain't right. If I take the car back behind the wall, that could be deemed as a mechanical. And if you're on the mechanical side of it, you're not technically on the DVP clock. You can fix a mechanical issue and come back out and be
See where you're going.
45, 50 laps down, but I fixed the mechanical problem. But this DVP clock needs to go away, period, just like this OEP rule.
Yeah. Is this NASCAR trying to figure out how to close a loophole while possibly creating another loophole?
They're closing a loophole, but opening a can of worms.
Well, that's another way to look at it. Okay. Well, we'll see. Again, how many times have we said this? One of those deals that crew chiefs always look for is to read the rule book, not for what is in there, but for what's not in there. Somebody's going to figure out a way to go around this. Next change regards the rules for artificially manipulating a race. This affected, for example, Christopher Bell out of the playoffs, put eventual 2024 champion Joey Logano into the final 8. The old article read, and I'm paraphrasing here, that NASCAR required competitors to race at 100% of their ability to try for the best finishing spot, unless apparently you're at Daytona or Talladega. Later, it continued on, stating that any competitor who took action with the intent of artificially altering the finishing positions of the event is subject to a penalty from NASCAR. They then defined artificially alter as any action by a competitor that would show or even suggest that the competitor did not race at 100% for the purpose of allowing a change in the finishing positions of the race. Now we're going to quote. The new rule alters the first part of that rule to read, quote, any competitor who attempts to manipulate the outcome of the event or encourages, persuades, or induces others to manipulate the finishing positions of the event shall be subject to a penalty from NASCAR as specified in Section 10. I could go on about all that, but I'm not going to go off into the weeds. While the penalties could come to the racers, it could also be handed out to crew chiefs and or spotters. So everybody's kind of on eggshells here on this one. And they state that there is the possibility that they could sanction a car maker. How, you might ask? Well, they could be docked manufacturers' points, Chevrolet, Ford, Toyota battling each other for top honors there. Loss of wind tunnel hours and or loss of RCFD runs. And I got to admit, I'm not exactly sure what RCFD means.
Same here.
But they're basically telling everybody, if we get the same thing that we got last year, trying to figure out who's going to and who's not going to get into the final 8, serious consequences could. Because, again, all of this seems to be, well, again, let me read it. Manipulate the finishing position shall be subject to a penalty from NASCAR. Not will be, shall be. This is at their discretion. And if I'm found guilty of it in one case, and Matt, you're found guilty of it in another case, let's say my case happened during the regular season, your case happened during the playoffs, are they going to look at those two as the exact same thing because it was the exact same penalty and penalize us the exact same way? Or are they going to look at it as, well, Steve did it during the regular season. That's not as serious as Matt having done it in the playoffs. So we're going to hit Matt harder?
They'll use the latter more than the former. They've done it before. So why would they not do it again?
Yeah, I know. So, again, you want to go through the process of trying to clarify these things and make sure that the racing is clean and that we're not trying to do things that are untoward. But to me, in your attempt to fix this, you're creating bigger problems.
Yep. Kudos to John for getting the RFCFD, Reduced Cost Facility Development.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that, John. If they would just, kid God, if they would just come down with the biggest sledgehammer that they could possibly come down with, they wouldn't have to worry about this. Nobody would do it again.
Yeah, but they won't.
No, unfortunately, they won't.
They won't.
All those rules that we just talked about related to the Cup Series specifically, there's some others. We'll get to some specifically that, well, actually, I think the only other one here is this one, and it covers all NASCAR traveling series. that states that should a team be penalized and decide to appeal the penalty, the appeal window is now slimmer. You used to have 3 days to make the appeal. Now you only have 2. They also clarified that fines that had been assessed specifically to a crew chief before, or fines for technical infractions, will not be assessed to the crew chief anymore. They will just be assessed to the team owner or race team. I think we all pretty much figured out a long time ago the teams were paying those fines anyway. It wasn't like it was coming out of the crew chief's pocket.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks for clarifying it. We appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, let's take our next break here, John. As you get prepared to do that, we're going to turn our attention over to the world of open wheel racing. We'll start with IndyCar because we found out a little bit more about Marco Andretti and his time, and Prima Racing is actually getting in and showing off some stuff as they get prepared to, even though the fact that they don't have charters, enter not just 1 but 2 cars on a full-time basis here in the 2024 season, 25 season. Still stuck on 2024. They're getting ready to come in 2025. They stayed full-time with 2 cars. They showed off what they're going to look like. We'll show them to you when we come back after this break on this YouTube-only edition of CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel only, fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. We're going to get into things here in just a moment. Again, we're doing this by YouTube only, no radio partner this time. And coming up here in a little bit, I started to make preparations during the break to kind of give you guys an idea of exactly how snowy where my wife and I live. So we'll do that before the end of the show here. In the meantime, let's get into IndyCar news here, where Marco Andretti and Andretti Global announcing they have a new sponsor. It's kind of a return, really, of an older sponsor, Mapai. They're going to sponsor his number 98 entry again this year in the Indy 500. Car fielded by Andretti Herta with Kerbag and Janey, and Mapai joining in on this. They are the world's leading maker of chemical products for use in construction. Their second year to sponsor Andretti for the race. Marco hoping to improve upon his career best of second place in the Indy 500 in his history. Mapai is also a primary sponsor this season for Andretti's teammate Kyle Kirkwood, so they're going to make sure that they're covered. Pretty good-looking car overall. So we'll keep an eye on Marco and see if he can't at least claim an Indy 500 win. I don't know. This is again, kind of that Andretti curse, if you will. They can do fantastic things within the IndyCar world, but something about the Indy 500 just bites them in the butt.
Always has.
Unfortunately for them. Then there's Prima Racing. We've talked about this group. They're newcomers to the IndyCar world, and they are coming in full force. They have been running in the feeder series for Formula One, F2 and F3 specifically. They've done well. They're based out of Italy, but they decided they wanted to expand out. And instead of trying to get into Formula One, they said, hey, we can get an IndyCar team. And then IndyCar threw them a curveball and said, yeah, but we're going to do it this way. We're going to be in a situation where you guys don't have a charter. Charter? What the heck? We'll do it anyway. So they said, yeah, let's get into it. The car is going to feature the colors of the team's native country of Italy. It is mostly red and white over the majority of the car. Got some green highlights around the cockpit, specifically over the air intakes as well. It's a pretty good looking car, truth be told. They spent quite a bit of time and effort in doing the reveal, where they have gone out and hired veteran F1 and IndyCar racer Romain Grosjean to be their official reserve driver. This is a fantastic move because Grosjean not only can be their reserve driver, Callum Ilott not as worried about Robert Schwartzman. He's a rookie, so he can be kind of a sounding board to both of those drivers if they want that. On top of that, they've announced their team's sporting advisor as 2012 Indy 500 pole sitter and IndyCar race winner Ryan Briscoe. This marks a return to an organization that really kind of gave him his top-level racing start. He raced for Prima in the Formula One feeder series before he moved back over to IndyCar. And they did state this: Schwartzman will run the number 83, Callum Ilott will sport the number 90. So you got Romain Grosjean as your backup and a sounding board. You got Ryan Briscoe, who's the team sporting director, who can also be a sounding board. Prima Racing, at least at the very surface, is coming in, and they seem to be very, very willing to make a big splash.
Hey, go big or go home.
Absolutely. I got no problem with this. And all of this, again, without the safety net of they don't have a charter. And I still haven't really heard about how you would get into the transfer situation. I presume it's probably very similar to the way that it is done in NASCAR, but I would imagine there are probably some detail changes between the two series. But again, we haven't heard anything about it yet.
You would think it would be.
I would think so, yeah. I mean, there's got to be a way to where maybe not immediately.
Yeah.
In other words, you might put a moratorium on it and say, you were part of the original charter deal. Let's say you're Andretti Global, since we were just talking about them a minute ago, and you've got the rights to 3 charters. You have to hold on to those 3 charters for a specified period of time. We'll say 2 years before you can think about trying to sell one.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. That may be in there. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
All right. With all the talk about Helio Castroneves early in the show getting the chance to race in the Daytona 500, is there a chance that Trackhouse might decide to try to work with Meyer Shank Racing again, and this time do it in IndyCar? Well, during the press conference announcing Helio Castroneves' entry, Trackhouse Racing founder Justin Marks said that he does have an interest in he and his co-owner, rapper Pitbull, taking the entire team to at least watch the famed race, which he hopes might then lead to more, let's just say, in the near future stuff in IndyCar for the organization. Now, you got to remember something here. Trackhouse Racing, talk about going big or going home. They only began racing in NASCAR in 2021. They bought out Chip Ganassi Racing, charters and all, and started racing in 2022. And since then, he started a Craftsman Truck Series arm, for all intents and purposes. Got himself a MotoGP division of the company as well. Marks added, quote, "I was so moved and so captivated, easy for me to say, by the Indianapolis 500 that it was really a moment that I knew that the racetrack was going to be a home for me in some capacity for my entire life. The Indy 500 really cemented the passion for motorsports that I have had, and it put me on a path to thinking about it, racing, as a career." Said, quote, "Obviously, we won't be competing in the race in 2025, but there are discussions ongoing about how to make something like that happen. It's very high on my personal list. Then I got to get some sort of the business and commercial and the partnerships and all of that worked out, figure out how to do it in a meaningful and competitive way. I don't think the Trackhouse will ever be complete without us competing in the world's greatest open wheel race." So in other words, he's all but called a shot. He's saying, hey, at some point in time, we will get involved in the Indy 500. Could that mean maybe at some point in time a full-time entry in IndyCar and doing what Chip Ganassi was doing and what Team Penske is doing right now?
With Justin Marks, you never say never.
And with, you think about Pitbull, it's not like he's hurting for money. So it's kind of like having
No.
a not quite as rich Michael Jordan there. You've got a guy who has a good amount of money coming in to be able to back some of those efforts. If Pitbull is sold on an Indy 500, he might be sold on more.
Yeah, that possibility does exist, but I just go back to what I said with Justin Marks. You never say never, because he's done some of the craziest things, but it's made sense.
No, absolutely. Even MotoGP, and we talked about this last week, and the fact that one of the teams, KTM, is having financial problems. It certainly doesn't appear like Trackhouse is having any problems with their MotoGP team.
No.
I mean, we would have heard about that, I think, pretty quick.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's turn our attention over to Formula One, where officials with the Belgian Grand Prix have come to terms with a contract extension. So the races at Spa-Francorchamps are set to continue through 2031, with a caveat: not every year through 2031. 4 of the next 6 years, to be exact. Okay, so here's the contract. The contract calls for the race at Spa to run in 2026, 2027, 2029, and 2031. So they'll skip 2028 and 2030, meaning you have the opening for an alternate venue to be chosen those 2 years. We're years out from that, so we don't know what they're going to be yet. They might be announced this year, or they might wait till the last minute, basically, before they finalize the schedules for 2028 and 2030 before we ever find this out. F1 President Stefano Domenicali said, quote, "The Belgian Grand Prix was one of our races that made up our maiden championship back in 1950. So as we kick off our 75th anniversary this year, it is fitting that we can share the news of this important extension." Spa-Francorchamps is rightly lauded by the drivers and the fans alike as one of the finest racetracks in the world. It has played host to some incredible moments over its many years in F1. It's noted as being one of the longest tracks on the F1 circuit. And I like it, at least in the ways that I've raced it on the game Gran Turismo. I enjoy the track. I find it challenging, but a lot of fun too. But that brings up other scheduling, concerns here when we look at the slate of races from either 2024 or this coming year. For example, Imola in Italy sees their contract coming to an end after the 2026 season. Monza, which is the home of the Italian Grand Prix, they're signed through 2031. They're good for a little while. But the second race, Imola, that's in question. Then you got the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona set to run this year. But then in 2026 and on through 2035, Madrid is slated to host the Formula One race. Barcelona at this time is apparently going to be cast aside. You got the Dutch Grand Prix held at Zandvoort, a track that both Matt and I really, really like. That'll run this year and next, so through 2026. But they have decided that past that, they will not continue. France, of course, dropped off the F1 slate after 2022. We haven't seen a German Grand Prix since 2020. Now, all of a sudden, we're starting to question whether or not, well, let's put another spin on it, shall we? Go back to the days of this paint scheme right here, for example, as you're watching on CRN Live on YouTube. Home Depot. Okay, Home Depot was, for all intents and purposes, the sponsor of that 20 car when Tony Stewart came in. Interstate Batteries was the sponsor of Bobby Labonte at 2000 to 2005. We'll just put that nice little window in there. Jimmy Johnson, Lowe's. Denny Hamlin, FedEx, Jeff Gordon, DuPont. Okay, all of those effectively sponsored, if not the entire season, all but just a couple of races for 30 to 36 races throughout the course of a year. Now we get a situation where 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 sponsors help these cars get through a season in the Cup Series. Are we going to start to see more contracts like this where they will say, hey, yeah, we'll go for 5, 10 years, but let's take this 2 or 3 years off throughout the course of this contract and see if somebody else will fill in that hole?
I don't know, because it makes no sense to me why F1. It does, but it doesn't. They limit themselves so bad to so many races. But we know that they have set capabilities to have equipment sent a week ahead to a facility.
Sure.
It's worked that way.
Yeah.
So places like Silverstone, Paul Ricard, Hockenheim, Nürburgring, Brands Hatch, I'm just throwing names out there.
Sure.
They couldn't be on the schedule on a every year basis as the heritage tracks. Word it that way.
Okay.
They've got ability to do that.
They do.
But when you have the people like the Saudis and the people from Qatar and Abu Dhabi that have bukus of funds, let's use that term, and they put these gigantic events on at these top-notch facilities, somebody's got to go by the wayside if they've only got this limitation on this schedule of how many races they can run per year.
Right.
And it's unfortunate.
True.
I don't see a need for your Middle Eastern races. There needs to only be 2. I would say 2. I would say Bahrain, and I would say Abu Dhabi. Qatar and Saudi Arabia need to go.
Okay. Well,
And
and I'll say this before you go any further. I'll state this, that this kind of goes against what they're saying, because F1 said that they want to do a couple of things. They want to expand their footprint in Asia. Now, Russia's until they figure out what they're going to do with Ukraine, Russia's all but off of the schedule, and they're not coming back. So where else are you going to go? India's not going anywhere. Heck, they even dropped a Formula E race, so it's not going to be India. Where else are you going to go? You're going to go back to Thailand? You're going to go back to, I don't know. You're going to go back to the Philippines or Morocco? I don't get it. I don't get where they're going to go unless expanding out that footprint means in the Middle East.
Yeah, you need really only a maximum, in my opinion, you need maximum outside of the European countries. Let's call it that.
Okay.
Because where F1 is heavily based in Europe.
Yeah, that's their main base, let's face it.
Outside of that region, you don't need to have, I would say you don't need to have more than 2 races per region. Let's use the term region.
Okay.
You have a couple of races in Asia.
So
let's
say Japan and China.
Japan and China.
Okay. Then you got Australia. It's kind of its own region.
Australia is really in its own region.
I guess you could probably put some of those islands that are kind of off Asia, maybe Indonesia, if they decided to come back, you could maybe put them in a region with Australia.
Yeah, you would say Indonesia and Australia in a region.
Yeah, that would give you 2.
South America, you could go Brazil and Argentina, maybe.
Okay. And then that brings you to North America, where we have Canada, 3 races in the US, and 1 in Mexico. How do you think that situation?
With the only lone exception being North America, outside of Europe, you go 3. You go 1 in Canada, 1 in the US, 1 in Mexico.
Of the 3 races currently based in the US, which one do you keep?
COTA.
You keep COTA versus Miami or Vegas?
COTA.
Okay.
Coda puts on a better race, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. No, I'm just checking.
See,
And the only reason I say that is because when you think about it, we looked at it last week, the ratings or the number of viewers, and granted that was only here in the US, but Miami beat out both Coda and Vegas for number of viewers. And that's why I asked that.
Right.
Okay. So then you've got, let's also include this. They also want to go back to the continent of Africa. They're actively talking about South Africa and Rwanda, and we've talked about them. Rwanda is in the process of building a brand new facility. They state should be ready in either 2027 or 2028. So you would put 2 on the continent of Africa and then keep them kind of in their home area of Europe for the rest of the year?
I would, until I see that facility completed in Rwanda, I would keep the African continent to 1 at Kyalami,
Kyalami, South Africa.
and then go Europe. I would say go in a rotation between, I don't know, maybe a rotation of, I would say something in Germany and Italy.
Would you include France in that?
Well, Germany and Italy have 2 prominent facilities.
Sugar
using
fall
the
retard is
prom-
not anything to sneeze at.
I'm including France in the European rotation.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean,
with Germany and Italy having 2 prominent, with Imola and Monza in Italy, and Nürburgring and Hockenheim in Germany.
Yeah.
Whichever one uses the prominent one in Germany and Italy, use the other ones instead in there as a rotation for the ones for the Rwandan circuit in Africa until it's 100% completed.
And we know that it's a grade F1, or grade 1 for F1.
Yep.
Okay. It's interesting. We'll see how it goes. I mean, you noted it. They're up against their limit here of 24 races in a year. And apparently there's a lot of interest in hosting, despite the fact that it is not exactly inexpensive to host an F1 race. So we'll see.
Sure.
Then we turn to Cadillac. Cadillac has announced their plans for their own power unit. They've said that by the end of the 2020s, they're going to begin building and using their own engines and hybrid systems. And they're going to run them in the racers slated to hit the track in competition next year. However, the exact year that they begin using their own power unit has not been specifically announced. They've announced what they hope is going to happen, 2028. But again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, because here's what we do know. The plans for the actual building of the power plants, that's going to happen here in the United States. As we've detailed here on the show, Cadillac is going to use Ferrari power units. They've signed a multi-year deal, begins for 2026, does not specify how long they're going to be using those Ferrari power units. GM has contracted with PWG Motorsports. They are going to oversee the Cadillac racing operation. The two have formed a separate company called GM Performance Power Units. They will have their own dedicated facility that is going to be close to GM's technical center in Charlotte, North Carolina. They state that will be open by 2026. Again, the initial statement said Cadillac would like to be a full works team. In other words, fielding their own cars, building their own cars, and their own power units in place for 2028. But we've all heard about the best laid plans of mice and men, right? So I don't know whether or not that's actually going to be able to happen. And again, are they building this, or are they going to take over a facility that is currently in existence close by the GM Technical Center in Charlotte? All of this stuff we don't know yet.
Think about this here. Where is the GM Technical Center located in Concord?
It's right by Hendrick Motorsports.
So within technicalities, Hendrick Motorsports is going to have its own F1 engine shop.
Well, that's just a darn shame. How long before Hendrick then starts thinking about getting into IndyCar, because it's not that big of a jump to go from F1 to IndyCar engine-wise. We've talked about that.
Really close.
I mean, heck, they're already half partnered with McLaren on the Kyle Larson entry as it is.
Really close.
It'll be interesting to watch this.
Because
Um,
anybody that's ever been to Hendrick knows it's like going on to, well, I can say this now, and I can change my outlook on this. Going on to the campus of Hendrick Motorsports is like going on to a Conference USA campus college,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
if not American Athletic Conference. It's a huge campus.
Yeah.
They've got more than the space to do that. And anybody that's ever been there knows that the GM Performance Center, Technical Center, sits literally within 100 yards, if not closer, of the main entrance point to Hendrick Motorsports in
Yeah.
Concord.
It's an easy golf shot.
There you are.
All right. We'll see where it goes. Mercedes changing things up in the wake of the departure, I should say, of 7-time F1 champion Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton's got a personal contract with Puma Footwear. So therefore, Mercedes was kind of using Puma, but Puma gone with Hamilton. And now Mercedes has themselves a new footwear deal, and they've signed with fellow German company Adidas. Not really that big of a surprise, truth be told. Again, with Hamilton's announcement before 2024 that he would be leaving Mercedes for Ferrari, Mercedes began working quickly on the replacement footwear and apparel maker and leaked actually some images of the new Adidas Mercedes branded apparel pretty quick, well before the 2024 season ended. Adidas, in their deal, they're set to make clothing, footwear, and other accessories not only for the team, but to make them available for sale for fans of the team or just of the series, Formula One. And this, they state, will happen before the 2025 season begins, and that's mid-March. So they got about 2 months to get that done before the Australian Grand Prix. The other brand name that Mercedes has a deal with is Tommy Hilfiger. They have a personal services contract with Hamilton, so the future of that partnership is not yet known. But let's face it, if you're going to do a new deal with a new apparel maker, to go with one based in the same country that you're based in really kind of only makes sense.
Yeah, that is good for sure. But so I guess now know that can go to the Puma store in Birmingham and get some really cheap Mercedes branded gear now.
That's an interesting point. So if you've got a Puma store anywhere near you and you've been looking for Mercedes stuff, you can get it now cheaper.
I know the one respectively in Birmingham.
I know which one you're talking about as well. Let's see what else. I'm not going there today, by the way. Franco Colapinto notably replaced Logan Sargent at Williams midway through the 2024 season, but even he knew it was going to be temporary. The team had already signed Carlos Sainz for 2025, and that meant that he was going to be out of a ride for this coming year. But his performance caught the attention of all the other teams, specifically two, Alpine and Red Bull. And after doing a buyout of his Williams contract, Colapinto has now signed on. Not with Red Bull, but with Alpine. It's an interesting choice. I kind of get the feeling I know why, though. If you think about what's going on over at Red Bull, no guarantees over there. Alpine, on the other hand, will bring him on, yes, as their reserve driver. Having already announced that Pierre Gasly is returning, he'll be joined by a newcomer, Jack Doohan, the Australian rookie, meaning that if either cannot make a start for whatever reason, Colapinto is the team's go-to. It will likely also put a bullseye, a lot of people said, on especially Doohan. And I get this. I mean, they could certainly do the same thing that Williams did and look at Logan Sargent and say he's on a hot seat real quick. But the truth be told, I think there's a hot seat and a bullseye on Pierre Gasly as well. I think both of them have this bullseye to perform because we've already seen that Franco Colapinto is not overwhelmed by F1 competition. He performed quite well. Even when you consider the fact that the Williams wasn't the best car, he performed quite admirably in that car in his short time in it.
He did.
So I do think that this makes a hot seat for both Gasly and Doohan to perform.
I would say more with the rate we've seen things go lately. I would say more Jack Doohan than Gasly.
I don't disagree, but I think most people, said that Doohan had the bullseye on him and almost ignored Pierre Gasly, and I don't think you should do that.
Right.
And then there's also this. Alpine tabbed Ryo Hirakawa, who did the postseason test for Haas F1. He's also going to be a reserve driver. He's secondary to Franco Colapinto, but they've got two pretty high-profile reserve drivers now over there at Alpine.
Mm-hmm.
And Aston Martin continues to make changes in the wake of last year where they didn't perform like they thought they should. They've got a new team principal for 2025. Their 2024 team principal, Mike Crack, they've put him in the role of chief trackside officer. Whatever that truly means, I don't know. And they've announced Andy Cowell as the new team principal for 2025. Cowell joined Aston Martin last July. Before that, he was with Mercedes as the managing director of Mercedes AMG High Performance. And this was during their time of dominance with Lewis Hamilton behind the wheel and his teammates from about 2013 when they got into the V6 era up to 2020. Midway through the 2020 season, Cowell stepped down and moved into a consultant's role with the organization. And that really meant that he could leave almost at any time. This is Aston Martin really doing a total changeover in what it was that they've been doing. You get a guy who is a championship man with Mercedes. You got Adrian Newey, who built championship cars for Red Bull, both coming in to Aston Martin throughout the course of this year. They're really stating we need to be better than what we were. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure indeed.
Good luck.
None indeed.
You got a dogfight going on over there? What's going on?
Hold that thought.
Just checking. I'll tell you what, John, let's go ahead and do this while Matt's figuring out what's going on with the dogs. We're going to go ahead and roll on here and get into our final break, I think. We'll get into a break here, and when we come back, something that we kind of talked about a little bit last week, which was numbers assigned to different drivers. We'll show them all to you. We'll detail which ones are not carryovers. In other words, the rookies, the ones that are coming into the series. We'll tell you what numbers they're using, and we'll give you a show off of it. Formula One's got a new deal for official timekeeper. We've got the Xfinity Series. We've got the Craftsman Truck Series, and even a bit of Formula E, I should say, news to get to. All of that coming up here in what will be probably our final segment of this week's snowy edition of CRN right here live on YouTube.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Two tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Run to the checkers here as we're talking a little Formula One action, and we kind of mentioned this a little bit last week and got confirmation on all of them for this week, the numbers that the drivers are going to be using in 2025 in Formula One. We talked again a little bit about this. The drivers choose the number they're going to use, and they use it throughout their entire career. So it really only affects the newcomers for 2025, because if you're a veteran, even if you move from one team to another, think Nico Hulkenberg going from Haas F1 over to Sauber, he keeps the number he had. And we already mentioned Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan will take the number 7. And you'd think, well, hasn't the 7 been used before? Well, indeed it has. Remember, the Formula One rule states that if the driver who last used it has been out of the series for at least 2 years, said number becomes available again. Well, it used to belong to Kimi Räikkönen. He was the last driver to run with the number. He's been gone. So the number 7 became available again. Then you got Oliver Behrman, Ollie Behrman. He comes into Haas F1 as a rookie. He's going to use the number 87. This is a number never before used in Formula One. I presume that there's some sort of meaning to it, but honestly, I haven't figured out what it is yet.
Yeah.
There is Sauber's Gabriel Bortoleto. He has gone with the number 5, and this was a number that was used very, very recently. Last used by Sebastian Vettel. So when he saw that it was available after literally only 2 years, he jumped on it. Who else is there? Kimi Antonelli. Kimi has taken over for Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. He's chosen the number 12. 12 was last used by Felipe Nasser. Isaac Hadjar coming in for Racing Bulls. He takes on the number 6. That was last used by Nicholas Latifi. And finally, over at Red Bull, Liam Lawson has gone with the number 30, and that was last used by Jolyon Palmer. So of all of those numbers, they are all numbers that were previously used except for the one that Oliver Behrman chose. And again, that's the number 87. I really wish I knew what the meaning of 87 was to him.
Just like I can't figure out the meaning of what 63 is to Russell or 81 is to Piastri.
That's true. Numbers mean specific. I mean, for example, you have the number 10. And you've explained this before, but it does have meaning to you. Let's go ahead and real quick explain what the meaning of the number is for you.
The 10 for me is the month that me and my wife got married. It's the month that we met each other. It's the month that my niece was born. It's the month that her great grandmother was born. And there's something else I'm sure I'm missing too.
So there are a lot of things that make you want to go with the number 10. And I've said ever since I was a kid, 4 has always been that number that has always just kind of stood out to me. And if I were to run any number, I would want to have a 4 in it. And I didn't care whether it was 4 or 14 or 24, 34, 54, 64, 74, 84, 94, or any number within the 40s range. I just wanted to have a 4 in it. Just because that's one of those things. What would I prefer? Because I've been a fan of AJ Foyt going back a long time, and as noted again, I'm a Tony Stewart fan. I'd love to have 14. That would be the ultimate. And strangely enough, it's actually available right now in NASCAR, but well, nobody's giving me a ride, and I don't blame them. Formula One has unveiled a new deal for their official timekeeper of the series beginning this year. They're bringing back noted luxury brand Tag Heuer. Company has a long history in motorsport. They actually partnered as an F1 team sponsor back in 1965, became a title sponsor of a team in 1971 with Ferrari. Since then, teams have sported the Tag Heuer brand, and they've claimed some 230 wins, 595 podium finishes, 11 Constructors' Cup titles, and 14 Drivers' titles, and now they're just the official timekeeper of F1. They posted on their Twix account, quote, they say you can't turn back time, but we just did. From the golden age of racing to cutting-edge circuits of today, Tag Heuer has played an integral part in the world of motorsport, embodying precision and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The first watch brand, I should say, not this, the first watch brand to sponsor a Formula One race. We have partnered with some of the greatest teams in sports history, including Scuderia Ferrari, McLaren, and now Red Bull Racing. Plus, they're in Formula E right now. Tag Heuer Porsche might ring a bell to you. As we return, Tag Heuer's statement continued to our role as the official timekeeper of F1 in 2025. We're not just coming back, we're coming home. Again, the racetrack forged us. Speed, podiums, and the roar of engines are in our blood. So we're back where we belong, ready to conquer new victories and celebrate the adrenaline that drives champions to greatness. This means between them and Rolex, which sponsors, for example, the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, Tag Heuer replaces Rolex because Rolex was the official timekeeper. It's going to be interesting to see how Rolex counters on this.
Right.
Because they will. They're not going to say.
Oh, they will.
They're not going to sit idly by on this. I can guarantee it.
Mhm.
When it was announced last year, the technical partnership specifically between Toyota and Haas F1, you and I kind of got to wondering about when it was going to be announced, because if Toyota is dipping their toe into something, that means that's in preparation for diving. One would think.
Yeah.
Toyota going in and partnering with Haas F1, and it does. They got talking about it this week, got them more seriously thinking about how they could get more involved in the Formula One series. Toyota was a works team. You might remember that. They built their own racers and engines from 2002 to 2009, but after a very little bit of success, but not enough for them, they backed out of the series. Now with the
Right.
Haas F1 partnership, Toyota's looking into how they might expand it. Toyota Gazoo Racing's director of global motorsport, Masaya Kaji, was in a press conference this week, said that there's currently, his words, not mine, no plans for Toyota to come back as a works team or to even build their own engines. But he did note that the team's World Endurance Challenge driver, as we have talked about just a few moments ago, has joined Alpine as a reserve driver and has them looking at other avenues to getting back in. Kaji cautioned, though, don't expect things to happen too quickly, said, quote, we're not at a stage where we would redirect all our resources to a full F1 return. What happens after 2030? Still uncertain. We're working on various new technologies, so whether our vector aligns with F1 remains to be seen. If we had our own team, we would choose which drivers to put in our car. So in that sense, it would indeed bring us closer to putting drivers in F1, but realistically, we have to evaluate how much money, how many staff members would be required to make that happen.
Right.
We found it interesting that Toyota is partnering with Haas F1. Gene Haas, he's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but he's getting up there. He's, I want to say, in his mid to late 60s.
I think so, yeah.
At some point in time, Gene Haas is going to have to think about something of a plan of succession. And it is interesting that Kaji said what happens after 2030 is still uncertain, because the Concord Agreement and the current engine deal that begins in 2026 only goes through 2031.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to see a succession plan that could, in some way, shape, or form, include Toyota taking over for what is now Haas F1. And if they decide that they're going to continue to partner with the engines coming from Ferrari, who do they care? Because it's been that situation since Gene Haas started the F1 team back almost 10 years ago now, in 2016 when they first hit the track.
Right.
Caution you to this right now. This is speculation on my part. It does seem to align it just because of what he said and what we know, but there's nothing confirmed.
It's hard to say who it would be.
But it just makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know who would succeed it with him getting up there in age.
Don't know. I don't know who else it would be.
I don't either.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it, see what happens over the course of time.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Over the course of our time on this show, we have let you know when teams would begin to show off their looks for the new season. Usually it happened kind of really throughout the month of February. Apparently no longer. Formula One scheduled a series-wide unveiling in a special event. It's going to be held in London's O2 Arena coming up at the end of February. It's going to happen the 26th through the 28th. This marks the first time in the history of F1 that all the teams, 10 of them this year, and all 20 drivers are going to be on hand to show off their cars for 2025 and their looks, some of which will change very little, like Red Bull. There may be some major changes coming for some of these teams. We've talked about Sauber. They've got 2 new drivers. Haas F1's got 2 new drivers. Does that mean that they do a radical change in their look? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, Red Bull, or I should say Haas F1 is kind of kept, except for the 1 year that they did the energy drink situation, which changed them from black and gold. They've always been red, white, and black in some way, shape, or form. Sauber could be a major change because they're getting ready to go to Audi, and last year's car, and this might just be me, and if you like this color on your car, Congratulations. I'm not trying to slight you in any way, shape, or form, but I've never been a big fan of green on a car. And I'm sorry, I don't like the green that Sauber has on the race cars.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not green either.
Again, that's
I
a
hate
personal.
green on race cars either.
Yeah, it's there's nothing. It's not superstitious. It's just a personal opinion for me.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
If you like it, more power to you. Oh, let's see. Oh, by all means, laugh.
No, I'm just going to reserve judgment on green on race cars.
Okay. I know that there was a superstition for that for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the basis of it was.
I was told it at one time, but I can't remember exactly what it is for sure. I know green,
and then,
the number 13, green, 13, and boiled peanuts are race cars.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember hearing about all those. And then I look up at the top corner up here, and my early days when I was a DW fan, and he was a Gatorade and a Mountain Dew sponsored, which meant green cars all over. Guess it kind of disproved that to a certain extent. Alexis DeJoria on the move again in the NHRA. Funny Car Division veteran is moving from Del Worsham's DC Motorsports operation over to JCM Racing and owner Joe Maynard. She's going to drive for them in the Bandero Premium Tequila-sponsored Funny Car entry for 2025. While she was with Del Worsham at DC Motorsports, she advanced to the final round 7 times, claiming a win at Bristol in 2021. She also raced for Kalita Motorsports from 2011 through 2017, where she claimed 5 event wins. Of the move over to JCM, she said, "I'm really looking forward to this next chapter in my career. Been many years since I was part of a multi-car operation, so I'm excited for that opportunity." Her crew chief and her entire driver roster for JCM will be announced soon. I don't think I realized it, but you think about Del Worsham, who's been a veteran within the NHRA. I didn't realize he was a single car operation.
Yeah, he has been.
So this really should only benefit Alexis DeJoria, because now she's got teammates that she can, again, talk to and say, hey, this doesn't feel quite right. What is it? And you've got sounding boards within your own race team to be able to kind of figure it out.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Xfinity Series, Sam Hunt Racing has decided to go with a full-time driver for 2025. Dean Thompson. Okay. Dean Thompson's going to drive the number 26 Toyota in the Xfinity Series this year. Thompson's all of 23. He's been in the Craftsman Truck Series since 2022, first for Nice Motorsports. Then he moved to Tricon Garage for 2023 and 24. This is the point where Matt's probably shaking his head because he's got no wins. He does have 2 top 5s. He does have 11 top 10 finishes. And he does have 2 Xfinity Series starts to his credit with Sam Hunt at Charlotte and at Talladega, where he finished 34th at Charlotte. He improved to 20th last October at Talladega. So you say, how in the world did he get this job? Well, how about the fact that he'll be sponsored by Thompson Pipe Group?
His own family company.
Comes with a check. MCM Transportation and Assured Partners are going to be there as well throughout the upcoming season. He will have a partner car. They're going to enter the number 24 again this year. This one likely will be like what Sam Hunt has done, which will be driven by a roster of different drivers. They just haven't been announced yet. I mean, congratulations to Dean Thompson, but at the same time, what has he done to deserve the race other than bring a check?
Nothing. Carry on. Sorry, but he hasn't.
Step it up there, Dean. Step it up. Just saying. Star Cars, nothing new. Talked about the 24 for Sam Hunt. How about the number 19 Toyota Xfinity Series entry of Joe Gibbs Racing? They're just now starting to announce who's going to be in that car. One of them is going to be 4-time Wayland Modified Tour champion Joe Bonsignor. He's going to get 5 starts this upcoming year. He has 1 right now to his credit. That was New Hampshire last June. Ran for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he did actually work his way up into the top 5 before he got in some late race contact with another car, relegated him to 22nd finishing spot in that race. Bonsignor, not a rookie by any stretch. He's 36, but he knows how to win. He's racked up 45 wins in the Wayland Modified Tour, along the way piling up 130 top 5s, 169 top 10 finishes, 33 pole positions, and he's led almost 5,500 laps in just, and I say just, I mean 226 career starts is nothing to sneeze at, but when you think about all of those stats, they have all come in just 226 career starts. Claimed 5 of those wins just last year on his way to his 4th series title in that division, and in the past 9 years, he's never finished lower than 4th in the final points in that division. But
Right.
he's stepping all the way up to the Xfinity series. That big change in those cars, or not as big as we thought?
Not as big. The horsepower to weight ratio is similar.
Okay.
Those modified cars are heavier than you think.
And let's face it, again, he got into the race last year and worked his way all up into the top 5 before contact, if I remember right, that was not of his own doing, and
Right.
knocked him all the way back to 22nd.
Right.
Okay. Then there's Corey Day. This is going to be an interesting one because there's a lot of layers to this. Corey Day has signed a multi-year deal with Hendrick Motorsports. In this deal for at least 2025, he is set to run several different series. He'll get some Xfinity Series starts. He'll get some Craftsman Truck Series starts. He'll get some ARCA Menard Series starts, in addition to his late model dirt track racing efforts, and he'll even get some Trans Am starts. And this is for a 19-year-old California kid. What we know, this 19-year-old is going to get 4 ARCA starts, which is going to happen for Spire Motorsports in their number 77. Then he'll jump into the Spire number 7 Silverado in the Truck Series. All efforts this year are going to be sponsored by HendrickCars.com. As for how many Xfinity Series starts, that was not specified. The only hint being he could get up to 30 total races across all asphalt racing efforts this year. That would not only include Xfinity, but Trans Am, Trucks, ARCA too. Kyle Larson reportedly brought Day to the attention of Jeff Gordon and Hendrick Motorsports, and they were impressed enough. They signed the 2022 Chili Bowl Rookie of the Year. There's something to be said for this, because if you think about it, Eric Jones was somebody we had never heard of until he up and beat Kyle Busch several years ago at the Snowball Derby, and now he's been a veteran and a 2-time race winner in the Cup Series.
Right.
So, this is one of those situations where if Kyle Larson says, hey, look at this kid, don't you have to?
When Kyle Larson brings somebody to your attention, you pay attention.
Okay. I mean, not all drivers have that ability, but Kyle Larson, I think, is one of those.
Yeah, and then when Jeff Gordon backs up and can second what Kyle Larson says, when you got the attention of Kyle Larson and Jeff Gordon, yeah, you put pen to paper.
So I think the question becomes, at least for me, I don't know about maybe for you, but at least for me, how much is too much? I mean, a slate of races, Trans Am, dirt track, late model, Truck Series, ARCA Menards, Xfinity. I get wheel time being very, very important, but how much is too much for a 19-year-old kid?
There's never such thing as too much seat time.
Okay. There you go.
Never such thing as there's never too much seat time.
Let the kid race as much as he can.
Yep.
Okay. Another star car lineup beginning to take shape. Junior Motorsports has announced Ross Chastain will get 5 starts on the team's number 9 Chevy Camaro. Shane Van Gisbergen going to get 4 starts in that car this coming year. Chastain set to drive the car at COTA, Darlington in April, Nashville, Dover, and Iowa. SVG will get to pilot the car in Mexico City, Chicago, Sonoma, and Watkins Glen. It is interesting to note SVG is going to get to pilot that car at his strength, road and street courses. But doesn't SVG need a little bit more seasoning on the ovals?
Yes and no.
Okay. Explain.
Yes, to where he gets used to these heavier stock cars on ovals, because I mean he got some good time last year, but you can always use a little bit more to make yourself better. But no, in the sense of he was able to adapt and run really well at tracks that you didn't expect him to do so.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would say like super speedways. He took the super speedways quicker than I thought he would.
Yeah, almost like a Dr. Walton.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Haas factory team wasted very little time after the 2024 season ended, naming their 3 drivers for 2025. This week, they announced who are going to be the crew chiefs for their Xfinity Series drivers. They're keeping veteran crew chief Jonathan Toney at the Xfinity Series level, and this is after he led Cole Custer to the 2023 Xfinity Series title. So he's still going to be the crew chief of the 00 Ford Mustang, and this puts him talking to Sheldon Creed behind the wheel. The other racer is going to change numbers. It was the number 98 when it was driven last year by Riley Earps. It is now going to the number 41, and Sam Mayer's driving this year. Calling the shots for that team is Jason Trincher. Trincher was in the Craftsman Truck Series, leading the number 77 team for Spire Motorsports. Before that, he was with Cowlig and called the shots for such Xfinity drivers as AJ Allmendinger, Landon Castle, and Justin Haley, among others. The Haas factory team also announced the hiring of 2 competition directors. You got Nick Sandler, who is coming in. He will see the Cup Series operation with Cole Custer behind the wheel of the number 41. Overseeing the 2 Xfinity Series entries will be Adam Gravitt. Sandler comes over to Haas, predictably from RFK Racing. Gavitt, on the other hand, is a Haas veteran. Gavitt's been with the team through its both previous iterations when it was Stewart Haas Racing, but even before that, he was in the engineering department and has been with Haas since 2004, well before the partnership with Tony Stewart ever came aboard. So this is him being rewarded, I guess, for being such a loyal employee. But over that course of time, it's not like he hasn't seen what's been going on and learned.
You could say that.
You know, I mean, this is the same thing that we see out of several different teams. Hendrick Motorsports does this. Joe Gibbs Racing does this, where you get those guys who work their way up from the bottom all the way up into whatever it is that they want to do, other than probably driving. And Gravitt has just proved over the course of time that he's that loyal Haas employee, and now we're going to give him the pants because he has been an understudy for so long.
Right. So
Joey Gase Motorsports is. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this. Haas factory team dropping into 1 Cup Series operation, but the 2 Xfinity. The Xfinity Series operation, though, we've never really been all that concerned about because we've seen what they've done, especially over the last couple of years, even while the Cup Series arm floundered. What do you think? Because, again, I've got this question in my head using the Team Penske Wood Brothers collaboration as an example. Wood Brothers doesn't seem to be getting all the benefits out of this, especially for a Team Penske, which has 3 straight Cup champions. RFK Racing, are they really going to be as open as what we have seemingly heard so far?
I'm honestly not so sure because of how you would have thought that, wear overall would have increased last year, but only 1 car picked up. The 51 car picked up way better than what it usually was.
True.
So it's hard to say. That's all you can say. It's hard to say until you start seeing what hits the racetrack.
Yeah, and I'm curious about it. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not fully convinced yet. I'm still thinking this might be a Team Penske Wood Brothers situation, and I hate that for Gene Haas because I respect him. But am I going to be actively rooting for them? Maybe not actively, but passively, yeah, I'd like to see them be successful.
Yeah.
Joey Gase Motorsports has announced the signing of Mason Maggio for multiple races this coming year. Maggio only has 8 Xfinity Series starts to his credit so far, including 2 for Joey Gase. The best finish coming in the JGM number 35 in Atlanta last fall. He is the second driver announced for that car. Greg Van Alst was previously announced as a driver for the majority of the 2025 races. Maggio seems to be a kid who's got promise, but man, he's raw.
He's got a long way to go and a short time to get there.
And Joey Gase Motorsports as the car.
Don't have the car.
Then there's this one, and I find it interesting because I like the idea, but good luck to Derek Cope. He's racing lifer, but he's he's kind of been out of NASCAR for most part of the last several years. This surprise guy who jumped up and won the 1990 Daytona 500 is hoping to change that with the creation of Cope Family Racing, set to make its debut as a part-time operation for 2025, and they're going to split their races between two drivers. One is fairly well known if you follow the Xfinity series, Leland Honeyman Jr. The second one, maybe not so much, Thomas Annunziata. Honeyman's going to take the wheel of the number 70 Chevrolet at Daytona. Annunziata, we know Coda. That'll be their second race. Past that, we don't know what their plans are. And did we have, look at that car right there using the number 70. You can see what the car is going to look like for Honeyman at Daytona. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Derek Cope has the same kind of luck as a car owner as he did as the driver way back in 1990.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is him acquiring the old stuff from Young's Motorsports, where Young's Motorsports had their Xfinity team last year. I'm not sure if that's it or not, because Leland Honeyman drove for him last year. And
that's true.
They seem to be okay.
And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to do to grab something that you can do with a turnkey operation as opposed to trying to build it from the ground up yourself.
Yeah.
All right. We'll keep an eye on. Oh, something that you and I are both really curious about. NASCAR put out the schedule for all three series last year. We went over them here on this show. And by and large, we were pretty pleased with what we saw. We questioned some things, but overall, it wasn't bad. And then this week, NASCAR made a change that, well, we just can't explain. When the Craftsman Truck Series heads to Talladega for the October playoff race, what was supposed to be a 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Central Time start has now been shifted to 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central Time. And you think, it's only half an hour, right? Well, this is a questionable move by NASCAR, the latest one in a series. Considering that by that point in time, we're getting into the fall, days are going to be getting shorter already. And I look ahead. Sunset in Talladega on race day, 5:55 p.m. Eastern, 4:55 p.m. Central Time. So they got an hour and 55 minutes from, and really not even that, because remember, 3 p.m. Central start time is not actually when they drop the green flag. That's when television and radio get into race coverage. You got to do all the pre-race ceremonies beforehand, and it'll probably be, we'll throw a round figure in there of about 3:20 by the time the green flag actually drops. So that means you got about an hour and a half before the sun officially sets. Truck races, yes, they're generally short, but this leaves very little margin for error. Like, I don't know, big crashes that need long cleanups. What are some of the tracks that are notorious for big crashes that take a long time to clean up? Oh, that's right, Talladega. And what does Talladega not have that places like Daytona and Charlotte and others do? Oh, that's right, lights for racing at night.
Yep. I don't understand it.
Why?
Don't understand it.
I don't either. I don't get it. I don't know what they're thinking on this, but that's NASCAR's decision. They made it. We'll have to see now if we can race the sun in addition to 36 trucks on the track.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. I hate doing that. I really do. I flat out hate doing that. As a PA announcer, it's hard.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No, I can only imagine behind the wheel what it seems like.
Imagine being a spotter.
Ugh. Yeah, there's that too. Tricon Garage, they've got a star truck going for 2025. They announced in the middle of the week their number 1 Toyota Tundra will be driving in all 25 scheduled Craftsman Truck Series races, but they're going to split them amongst 4 drivers. Best known of them, likely William Sawalich. He's going to get 5 starts in the truck, including at Daytona to kick off the 2025 season. But there's also Xfinity Series driver Brandon Jones. Jones is set to run full-time in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs Racing this coming year. He's going to get 7 starts in his truck. The other 2 is a Truck Series veteran, Lawless Allen. Lawless is going to get 4 starts in it. And then you got a 16-year-old kid by the name of Brent Cruz out of Hickory, North Carolina. He's going to get the vast majority of these starts, 9 of them in all. The 2-time winner of the ARCA Menard Series is going to get his first race at North Wilkesboro. Then he'll race at Lime Rock Park. Lucas Oil, Indianapolis Raceway, Richmond, Bristol, New Hampshire, the Charlotte, Roval, Martinsville, and Phoenix. How can a 16-year-old kid get around that? Well, he's 16, which means he can race on short tracks and road courses. Otherwise, he'd have to be 18, which is why the other drivers are in to run at Daytona and Talladega and the other intermediate tracks.
Right.
So this tells me that they are they're trying to groom Brent Cruz to take over this truck on a full-time basis when he turns 18.
Yeah.
What do you know about Brent?
He's a good little shoe, runs late models in Carolinas, legend cars, and runs some Trans Am stuff through the Midwest. Okay. He's a good little shoe that Toyota's got come through the pipeline.
Well, they got to rebuild this roster. There's no doubt about it. They seemed a little bare there for a little while last year.
Yep, they did.
All right, one more thing to note here before we wrap up for this particular weekend, and then I'm going to let you take a quick look at part of our land here and how it looks also covered. It took exactly one race for the new Cupra Kiro race team in Formula E to change their look. It's a pretty bold statement if you take a look at it closely. It combines the signature colors of both Cupra and Kiro. What's staying is the neon yellow of Kiro. It adorns the front and rear wings and the side, and over the top is copper. Cupra's color. This is a very bright racer. Should be fairly easily seen if you can ever see this particular series on television. But I'm not going to say it's a great looking car.
Nope. Nope.
I take it you can concur. It's not a great looking car.
No. Looks terrible.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Cooper Kiro, but I liked your old one better. Yeah, I liked your old one better. All right, producer John, let's see if we can't do this here properly. Make sure I don't trip and drop my computer all over the place. All right, here's what my land looks like. Vastly snow-covered. And there's a hill that is over in that direction that says that I can't get out. So that's why I'm at home. And that's why we're doing this show from home today. It's a pretty scene. There ain't no doubt about it. But being in the broadcasting industry, I can tell you right now, I honestly feel like snow should be included in that list of George Carlin's 7 words you can never say on television or radio. I don't like it because I generally have to get out in it or sleep at radio stations or whatever, and I just don't like it. And John was very nice to put the Talladega logo picture up there as well, kind of giving you an idea of how Talladega looked yesterday at about this time. Luckily, it should be gone here before too much longer because we're about to get nice and warmed up. So I'm looking forward to that and getting rid of all this stuff so that we can get out and about and live our lives again. And in the meantime, I believe that our plan is to, yes, do the Cross Flags podcast on Wednesday and then be back full time on the radio and right here on CRN Live on YouTube next Saturday. Unless I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me, Matt.
I don't see anything with that wrong.
All right. Hope you join us on Wednesday for Cross Flags and join us next Saturday right here on the Championship Racing Network. You all enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you throughout the course of the week and next weekend. See ya.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.